Welcome everyone to Exploring the Unsolved with Melissa, where we dig into some of the most perplexing true crime mysteries that refuse to give us answers. And today, we are going to St. Augustine, Florida, a city of ancient history, in cobblestone streets, a colonial charm. But behind its risque facade lies a sorry tale of ambition, scandal, and a gruesome murder. Today, we delve into one of the most chilling unsolved cases in Florida history, the murder of Athalia Lindsley, a glamorous Broadway dancer turned political activist whose life came to a bloody end in her own footsteps. Born on July 25th, 1917, into a wealthy, privileged family in Toledo, Ohio, Athalia Lindsley lived a captivating life but was controversial. To say her life was privileged would be an understatement. She grew up in the Caribbean before making her mark in New York. And for 2 decades, she graced the stage as a model, a Broadway dancer, and later became a TV personality on the popular game show Winner Takes All. She was bold, driven, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. Athalia had even been romantically linked to Joseph P. Kennedy, the elder brother of President John F. Kennedy. Rumors that they were engaged soon circulated, but tragedy struck when Kennedy died during World War II. Later in life, Athalia pivoted towards politics, running unsuccessfully for the state senate and planning a bid for a seat on the St. Johns County Commission. But despite her political ambitions, Athalia was a polarizing figure in St. Augustine, where her sharp tongue and fiery demeanor made her both admired and loathed. It was in this quite coastal town that her life came to a violent, premature end. And what locals had to say about Athalia was, even though she was well accomplished in her life, she was the type of woman who didn't really have that many friends. On January 23rd, 1974, it was another evening on Main Street where Athalia lived in a charming home overlooking the Machete River. But this peaceful neighborhood had been anything but pristine for Athalia. She had been embroiled in a bitter, well-documented feud with her next-door neighbor, Alan Griffin Standard Jr., a county engineer. Their clashes were well known, stemming from property disputes, and Athalia taking in 6 stray dogs. Her love of animals knew no bounds. This included her pet bird and, at one point, a goat. And her public allegations that Stanford had falsified his credentials. Athalia even warned officials at a county meeting that her life had been threatened. And just 3 months later, her prophecy came true. Between 5:30 and 6 p.m., Athalia was planning on walking her pet bird, Clementine, which is kind of weird. I don't know anyone who walks their bird. Athalia was attacked on the steps of her home. One witness described a middle-aged man in a white dress suit and dark pants fleeing the scene. The attack was brutal. She was struck 9 times with a machete, and she was nearly decapitated when she was found. Her severed fingers suggested a desperate attempt to shield herself from the blows, but by the time her neighbors, the McCormicks, found her, it was too late. It should be well known that her pet bird, known as Clementine, was not with her. The cage was smashed, but the bird was never seen again. And it should be noted that the McCormicks were also in a feud with Athalia at the time of her death. Other facts about Athalia during her life. She was married to the former mayor, even though they were living in separate homes. But Athalia was planning on selling her home and staying there, not wanting to leave it unoccupied until she sold it so that she could move in with her husband. At the time of Athalia's death, she was married to the former mayor of St. Augustine, a man named James Lindsley, and he said that the marriage was a happy one. But if it was picture perfect was too soon to tell. By this point, the police began looking at suspects, and the first one was obviously her husband, and he claimed that the marriage was well, and he offered an alibi the night that Athalia died. But police noted that there was a 15-minute window gap where he would have had the opportunity to kill his wife. And according to Athalia's sister, who has not been named, she was riding with her sister, and she claimed the marriage was not happy. They were having problems in the marriage. He was suspect number 1. Number 2 was, of course, Alan Stanford. And Alan was well known with the Feuds, neighbors, and the McCormicks. In fact, the son of the McCormicks yelled at his mom that Mr. Stanford was hurting Mrs. Lindsley. That's right, he identified him as the one attacking Athalia. The son of the McCormicks identified Stanford, to this point a little suspiciously, but they needed more evidence to link him to the crime. Not that long later, a mechanic claimed he found a box that had a bloody white shirt, dark pants, and a watch. And Alan said that his watch was missing a few days after Athalia was murdered. With all the evidence, plus the watch, including the fact that the white shirt had his surname on it, police were quick to arrest Alan for the murder of Dahlia, and the evidence seemed damning. The trial led directly to the Stanford home. An 18-year-old neighbor, the McCormick's son, as you recall, claimed to have seen Stanford attacking Athalia. And yet, when the trial began, cracks in the gates began to show. The defense painted Stanford as a church-going, upstanding citizen, incapable of such a heinous act. They argued that the evidence, including a bloody machete and clothing found near a city dump, had been mishandled by police and possibly planted. And as the trial went on, Athalia's husband was brought on to the witness stand, and he claimed that he did own a machete, but he was a realtor, and he claimed, like many other people, he would use a machete to clean underbrush when looking at properties. And when he was asked if the machete was his that was found at the scene, he said he could not identify it. And at starting turn events, just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury acquitted Stanford. To this day, many believe the investigation was botched, leaving Athalia's killer to walk free. A lot of people do, but could there be more to this story? Just 10 months later, on November 3rd, 1974, another tragedy struck. Frances Barnett, Athalia's close friend and neighbor, actually started to claim that she knew what happened to her and was telling people she was going to write a book and it was going to be a big deal. And she said, I feel completely safe in St. Augustine. I feel safe. I would walk at night still to this day, even after this murder. Like I don't care. But on that day, November 3rd, 1974, she went for her nightly walk, but never returned. A man walking found her body. Her skull was crushed. Beams, a former news writer, was rumored to be investigating Athalia's murder, as I said previously. Was her death connected to Athalia's? Was she silenced before she could expose the truth? Both cases remain unsolved, shrouded in mystery, and whispers of a conspiracy. Now, let's talk about what happened. What was it? Frances was beaten to death. Her body was left nude, yet police found no evidence of rape or sexual assault. That led investigators odd, as both of people noted the similarities in both of them. Both were elderly women alone at night and were viciously murdered, though the methods were different. Athalia was killed with a weapon, a machete. Frances was beaten to death. So, if it's the same killer, he used two methods. He used a weapon in one case, and yet possibly his bare hands or another object with another. So let's look into the theories. Theory 1 is that Alan Stanford was the one who killed Athalia. And with all the evidence, it does look like this adds up. His reason will be to end the feud, maybe to silence Athalia, but and remember, he's a high-ranking official in the county. Her making these little accusations can completely ruin his career, anything he has going for him. His reputation could be at risk if Athalia keeps things up. And the feud was well documented. Guaranteed they're going to have witnesses, but it's a church-going man versus an elderly lady. And it can go either way. Fearing maybe his reputation will be at risk, he kills her. And we have one witness, the son of the McCormicks, who did claim to see him at the crime scene. So at this point, and with no evidence of an alibi to back up his claims, he could have claimed it was his family, but once again, you can't really trust family or even friends to be witnesses in murder cases because, of course, they're going to back up their relatives' innocence. The other theory could be the McCormicks, but there's some neighbors who claimed that they the one who saw them rush into the crime scene. So it's highly unlikely they'll have that much time to kill Athalia, run back to the home, get rid of the evidence, and then rush back in a matter of minutes. Unless they're the Flash or Superman, I highly doubt that's possible. So the only other neighbor she's known to have a feud with was Alan Stanford and his family. So with all the evidence, a witness backing things up, but unfortunately, with police botching the investigation and accused of botching the investigation, it's highly unlikely that it's very likely that if Alan was the one who killed Thalia and who killed Thalia based on the evidence alone, it's going to be hard to prosecute when there's evidence that the investigation was botched. So theory 1 was Alan Stanford. Theory 2, it was her husband, James. Now, Now, despite what James said that their marriage was happy and they were going to have a night, things were going well, Athalia's sister claimed that the marriage was troubled. How Athalia mentioned in her letter that they were having problems. And with James being the former mayor and another high-ranking official, did he silence Athalia, fearing, did he kill Athalia due to problems in the marriage? As to what problems in the marriage, Athalia never really found out through the letter what they were. If he was having an affair, maybe he was getting violent, we don't know. But they were living in separate homes. Was this for a reason? So Athalia claimed she was only staying in the home so that it will be occupied, and then she planned to sell it. Once it does, she'll move out. But was there another reason why she was living in the home? Did she want to be separated from her new husband for a reason? We don't know. We don't know what problems Athalia, specifically what were the problems in the marriage. The motive for him to kill Athalia will be through the problems in the marriage, and he would have the power and money as being a well-respected mayor, good popular influence, and being real and having a good business to get away with it. And of course, he would have officials, his friends, to back him up to ensure that no one harms our beloved mayor for a beloved mayor, like, to protect his reputation and make sure no one finds out that he was the one who ordered or was the one who killed his wife. Now, the one evidence we do have him linking him to the crime scene was he also had a machete, but he claimed many people had machetes back then to clean out underbrush, or overgrown plants in their yards. And he owned a realtor business. As I said previously, he said that he used the machete to clean the underbrush when looking at new houses to sell. So that's very likely so that was his reason. So we have James. Theory 3 was this was act of a serial killer. Now, when we have a budding serial killer. Now, the way this would actually add up is because we have two murders. We have Athalia, and then we have Francis's murder. Both of them happened having 10 months apart, which is weird for a killer to have two separate kills. But if Francis was getting closer to finding out who killed Athalia, the killer may have targeted her to remain silent. We have no idea what happened to her evidence. We have no idea what happened to her. So it's possible that the killer killed her, then took everything she had against him, and then got away. But the kill methods were different. It's rare for a killer to have two kill methods. One being having a weapon, the other one being possibly with no weapon at all. So at this point, this does point to a serial killer. So a possible killer on the loose, a lot of people do believe the two cases are connected. As I said with my last case, the theory of Gene Spangler, there are actually similarities between the two victims in this case. Both Athalia and Francis were older women. Both of them were attacked at night. They were attacked in brutal ways, and their bodies were found. And their bodies were found. The only two differences here is that Athalia was murdered with a weapon. Francis was probably not murdered with a weapon, and Athalia was left clothed, while Francis wasn't. Well, Francis wasn't left clothed. She was found without clothes on. But the one thing is, no women were sexually assaulted. I mean, you could argue that the killer targeted Athalia for just acting and had no plans of sexual violence towards her, and killed Francis, and maybe he removed her clothes to humiliate her. That is a common thread when it comes to male killers, to remove women's clothing to humiliate them when their bodies are found. So, as for my personal theory, I would have to say it's hard to tell, because all three theories look like they're pretty possible. We have the neighbor, Stanford, who obviously had a motive to kill her for the neighborhood feud and threatening to lose his status and his place in the town due to the allegations that were being made towards him. We have the husband, who obviously had motives, though that is hard to tell, or a serial killer. Or is it possible that one of them both killed them? So the fourth theory, which I think my theory, is that I think either Stanford or James killed both Athalia and killed Francis, as they were the only ones really with a true motive. If this wasn't an act of a random killer or serial killer on the loose, then it's most likely was one of them. And what I think happened, I think either Stanford or James found out that Francis had enough evidence to get one of them, either Stanford, rearrested again, and he's going to go back to trial, and unlike last time, he's going to be found guilty. And keep in mind, Florida does have the death penalty to this day, or James. She had enough evidence to take them to court, and they were going to get either the death penalty or they're going to get life in prison based on the brutality of the crime. And as a news reporter working on a book and known for being really tough-naked with her stories, she probably gathered some evidence against them. When they found out that she was going to go through this, they waited. They knew, which is part of the mistake that cost her life, that she walked alone at night. And they took that on one of them, took the opportunity, and killed her to silence her. And using their status and influence on the town, they made sure to go back to that home, find evidence, and made sure the police never found it. Because even though they may have had some dirty cops on their side, there's a very good chance they had cops who were on their side. So when they went to the home, they took that evidence and hid it away, burned it up, and got away with it. That's what I think happened to these two women. Honestly, that is the more likely motive there. Athalia Lindsley was a woman resilient and ambitious, but her story ended in horror. Was her murder the result of a personal vendetta, political conspiracy, or something else entirely? And who silenced Francis Beams? Decades later, these questions linger, haunting St. Augustine like a restless spirit. DNA testing, modern forensics, and investigative journalism might have brought justice. But the evidence is long gone, and with it, perhaps, the answers. So you agree with this. What secrets still lie buried beneath the cobblestone of St. Augustine? Or who really killed Athalia Lindsley? This has been Exploring the Unsolved with Melissa. Subscribe for more untold stories and join us next week as we cover another chilling tale. Happy holidays to all my viewers who are celebrating the holidays this December, and remember, stay safe.